Hello and welcome to another edition of the Baseball Bluebook Bullet Point program. Every week, we are going to discuss at the younger age groups what we feel is key developmental information and provide to you as parents uh, kind of a resource, uh, programs that will allow you to maybe understand youth sports, the development aspect and dynamic to it. And I really want, and it is our hope, both my guests, who I'll introduce here shortly, and myself, to allow parents of younger children to understand not only the growth dynamic, both mentally and physically, but some of the hurdles or topics that you may want to familiarize yourself with as you begin entering your children into various youth sports. My guest today is someone that I have chatted with several times in the past. Tamara Siemon is not only a former Division I student athlete at Duke University, and her husband is at Wake Forest, as you can see there in the background, but she is a mom. And I think it's really important to understand for parents, someone that is not only well versed in the topic, but has grown up as an athlete as well as being a mother. And Tamara is the owner of Elite Mindset Development. She's a performance enhancement coach. Tamara, thank you so much for taking the time to join us again today.
Oh, my pleasure, Coach. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for the topic we're going to dive into.
Yeah, I think, as you and I kind of discuss a little bit off camera here, I think it is one of the least served or underserved aspects of the market is the youth athletic parents that are, that 6 to 10 and then subsequently 11 to 12, all the way up until the age of 14, prior to, the high school coaches jumping in. And what you and I have discussed several times in the past is, the dynamic of raising good, fully mentally stimulated and athletically developed children within the confines of youth sports. So my hope today is that we can dive into specifically three specific age groups, one being that 6 to 10, then that 11 and 12, and then finally that 13 through 14. You and I have discussed the dynamic of grit and growth and the intertwining of both, and why it is important and possibly imperative to make sure that both are being discussed and taught by parents. And so what I'd like to start off with is I'd like to make sure that parents understand your dynamic at home as a mom, and then kind of your development with your own children as it pertains to the youth sports.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I am a former Division I student athlete. It's been a few years. Married a college baseball player, and we have two kids, 13 and 15, who play travel sports. And much like any other parent, it is full throttle. It is all consuming. So that's really what pushed me to what I'm doing now, to kind of leave the corporate world and become certified as a mental performance coach, because quite simply, I saw the pressure. I felt the pressure, right? Not only for my kids, but, turn around, look at any field. You can know that a child is capable, but you can see through the pressure and the environment that there's a disconnect, right? And this is clearly not fun. So that is what led me to become certified as a mental performance coach. And I've been doing this for a little over a year now. I think what makes me a bit unique, like you said, is that I'm also living it, right? I am in it, and I have the empathy and compassion as a parent, but I also grew up in what I'll call a tough love environment, right? It was a different generation. And I think that environment subconsciously helped me figure out, right, a growth mindset, grit. You've asked me these questions, and in preparing for today, I had to kind of dig a little bit and say, well, where did mine come from? Right. And so we'll talk through that. But that's why I do what I do, is that sports opened up doors for me that ordinarily would not have opened. And they are, top 3 of things that I was most passionate about as a kid. So I want other kids to be able to explore and exploit those passions and truly seize, and reach full opportunity.
Well, I think it's really important. You mentioned something there, the different generations, so I'm a little bit older. Actually, I'm a lot older. So, in my younger days, there was a lot of organic exploration, meaning you went to the playground. There wasn't a lot of adult interaction other than, little league or, formal practices with, youth basketball, et cetera. Well, in today's world, we're getting a lot more adult interaction. And I think it's really a great opportunity because I think in the world of youth sports, we hear from so many men, dads and coaches, and we don't hear from a lot of moms, and we don't hear from a lot of people that have your athletic background. So I think it's really great. And I'd like to start, give us your definition of the word grit, and I really hope that parents understand where this is coming from. It's you, and it's your past as a young athlete being raised by your parents, and now as a mom, what you've learned and how you kind of share that with your children.
Yeah, I think grit is a character trait that you embody when you are following a passion and you are willing to persevere. So that's the simplest way I can describe it. Words that come to mind: somebody who's gritty has stamina. They have long-term goals, right? They're not just interested in the next highlight. They, even at a young age, understand it is a marathon.
Right.
Okay. And they're curious and they're grateful and they've got to be aligned with their passion. That's what comes to mind when I think of grit.
I think it's so important for parents when you hear that to understand, don't get lost in just what's going on today. Understand that grit is, I love that stamina and that the marathon comparative. It is really nothing more than unique daily learning opportunities with the expectation of being better tomorrow than we were today. So I love that and how you integrate it with that growth mindset. I think it's really a sorely needed topic. And so let's break it down by those age groups. Let's talk about grit and growth as it pertains to that 6 to 10-year-old in that span as they're just beginning to become young athletes.
So I want to preface that by saying that grit and growth mindset feed off of each other.
Right.
You can't raise a gritty child unless you are representing a growth mindset.
Yes.
And you ideally are following your passion, right? And I get it, right? We've got bills to pay. We've got responsibilities. That doesn't mean that every day is Pollyanna and perfect and fun, right? I mean, you're doing what you love, and yet I'm sure there are parts about your podcast or book writing or whatever you're doing that just have to be done, but they're not exciting. So let me be clear on that, right? There are parts of the pie that we need to kind of suck it up and do. But if you are normalizing failure, if you are creating an environment where you're curious and it's not, the message is not led by something stat driven or rank driven or comparing your child to somebody else, right? Then we can start to just come from curious between ages 6 and 10. Do you like this sport? What do you like about it? Do you understand why you're supposed to hit a certain way, or, kind of the nuances? Coming from curious, because as Malcolm Gladwell will say, like, we have to do something for 20,000 hours before we can master it.
Right.
So how about we decide on the front end of that 20,000 hours that we actually like this?
Right. I think it's important I mean, to me, when we're introducing a child at 6 through 8 to a sport, we have to understand that the skill set is not only physical, but it's mental. And there's certain competitive juices and dynamics, but without the passion, there is no purpose. And so I think you really, when you and I have talked in the past, I think it's really powerful for parents to really understand that grit is almost like the early seeds of the love and the passion to participate in a sport. And I think that gets lost a lot when parents begin to sign children up for various sports.
I agree. I think about my son playing travel ball for baseball in 8U. And so he was 7. He was good. He was good enough to make the team out of our town, but he still liked to kind of play with the dirt in the outfield.
Right.
And I remember feeling as a parent, like panic, like, oh my gosh, he's going to get left behind. I didn't know any better. All I knew was all of a sudden we were on this different path, and it was slick and it was fast, and there's lots of shiny objects to look at. And man, you can feel left behind quickly. So then you get sucked into I got to pay for lessons, and I'm going to break down the game after every game about what he did right and what he did wrong. And before you know it, your child, what about your child? Does he even enjoy it? What did he learn from that experience? And so I have made my share of mistakes, and I understand how easy it is to make those mistakes. I've been there. We have to focus on them. And do they like it? Are they enjoying it? Is this where they want to be? Right?
Well, I think it's important I think parents want to know, how do they execute this game plan of grit and growth? Like, what are a few things that they can do between those ages of, say, 6 and 10 to inhibit or promote the growth mindset? Like, what are a few maybe key phrases or things to watch out for as parents, things that can help them during those early ages?
Yeah. So, and I think this applies across the board, but I'll give you some specifics to the 6 to 10
Okay.
in a second. We need to model and normalize growth mindset and failure at home. The earlier, the better. It can't feel forced. So as an example, trying something new, right? Eating at a different restaurant versus the same old thing. That might sound like, hey, what does that have to do with it? But being curious is, I think, a direct trait of someone who has a growth mindset, who's open-minded. So modeling that, right? And encouraging, just trying, not even characterizing it as failure, because that combination of challenging and encouraging and giving the support is going to give the kid the environment that they need to feel safe to try and fail. It's not coddling. It's just, hey, we're curious. We're learners here. We're just exploring life. So I would also say, as early as you can, understand what your kids gravitate towards and encourage them. Do they like puzzles? Do they like books? Are they into technology? What are they gravitating towards? Because in doing that, you are fostering interest and passion. And as we talked about at the top, to be gritty, you got to be passionate about something, right? Another example, Walter, is breaking things down into steps. So here, when I think of a 6 to 10-year-old, I'll use baseball or softball. This child is going to learn how to hit for the first time. We're not going to focus on teaching them how to separate or how to hit a curveball at age 6.
Right.
We're going to tailor the skill set and the steps. You tell me, if you asked me, a 6 to 8-year-old, I want them to learn how to use their legs and their core and what the correct bat path is. Is that too much? Am I wrong?
I think that is exactly. In other words, you can't expect to go in and try to teach a 6 through 8 or 6 through 10-year-old any of the advanced, dynamics of hitting until they have the basics of bat striking ball consistently. Because
Yes.
I think what you're saying, and I think what a lot of parents don't really give a lot of consideration to, is the 6 through 8-year-old or the 6 through 10-year-old, they have a fear component because, okay, the ball is being thrown. I know that ball is pretty hard. So there's a fear component. The bat's a little heavy. It might feel a little awkward. So we're not really worried about the basics. And again, reiterating, a lot of children no longer take what I call organic repetitions, which can be as simple as a broomstick and a rock or an acorn, etc. Now everything is a formal, T and 30-minute increments. And so is your child an audible learner? Are they a visual learner? And we don't put a lot of those into consideration. And so I think what you're saying makes a tremendous amount of sense. And so it begs the obvious question before we go further. Can you have growth without grit?
I don't think so. No, I think you need both.
Right.
You need both to, yeah.
I mean, the biggest part of this is what if they're really not passionate about it? What if we're driving children to a sport and they're really not passionate, but they don't want to let mom or dad down, or they don't want to let the coach down, or what have you, the adult? I think that's a really big part of that 6 to 10 dynamic is, unless there is grit, unless there is passion with purpose, there can be no growth. So we can pay for all these 3 Gs, I call it, gadgets, gadgets, and gurus. We can pay for all those things, but they're really not going to resonate, or it's not going to become part of the young athlete. So let's talk a little bit about that next age grouping, which is where we're kind of getting into that 4th through 6th grade time period and 7th grade. And now there's a physical growth. And now the grit is kind of turned into, okay, what's my purpose? I mean, I want to make this travel team at the 10U or 12U level. And it really starts to drive the engine more than the actual development. Would you agree with that?
No, I agree. And I still think when I think about teaching grit at that age, it's still being relevant, meeting them where they are. I think, again, easier said than done, but one of the biggest mistakes we can make is, as kids are starting to grow, right? That's when you start to see like the kid who's 5'11" at age 10. And then your child is 80 pounds soaking wet and you're like, he's playing against a man, and that happens and it's baffling, but we can't do anything about it. We also don't benefit from the comparison. So again, it still needs to be meeting your child where they are, breaking down the game into steps, right? So once they learn, like we talked a few minutes ago, once you learn the basics of hitting, okay, maybe now in 6th grade, you're learning about the off speed because you're seeing it for the first time. So just tailoring your message and making sure that their why is very clear, because if they don't love it, then boy, you as a family, that puts a lot of stress and strain on you as a family to support this hobby. And it's like, why are we even doing this?
Is it okay to ask children at those ages their why, or what do they love about the sport, or what is it that excites them about not only games, but practices or learning? At what age should we be asking our children those questions?
I think 4th grade. I think again, you tailor the question based on the age, but they're not going to love every practice, but they should love going more than not. They should love the social aspect of seeing their teammates. They should love the satisfaction of working hard and improving, right? They should love their coach and they should love the sport. So I think it's important to ask those questions and then just tailor how you ask them based on their age.
So I think you brought up a great point, and one of the key phrases that I used to always utilize when I was, my sons were younger, was always comparison is going to be the thief of all of your joy. So don't worry about comparing yourself. But it is a large part of youth sports because we look to our right and our left, and this boy throws a little harder, that girl runs a little faster, et cetera, et cetera. Can you talk about all of the age groups really, but the comparative that parents may, say without understanding, oh boy, you just kind of put a negative into your child's head. Billy's a lot faster than you, or Billy's a lot bigger than you. It's really not pertinent or relevant, right? Because development is not anything that can really be predetermined. I mean, that's a big topic, but I know that you have some thoughts on that.
Yes. And it's addressing this requires being proactive and focusing. And if that means, like I joked with you one of the last times we talked, that sometimes I need to have a little pep talk with myself before I get out of my car if I know my kid is playing in, a stressful 8th grade travel ball game, whatever that means. So it's being prepared in advance and knowing that your number one job is to support your child. And what does he or she need? Most often, they need to see a smile on your face when they look over. They need to know that the love and support is unconditional. And they need to know that you'll be there to talk when they're ready, right? So easy for me to say, really hard to do, but the comparative is the slippery slope. We don't benefit from that as adults. So why would we put that on our kids?
I agree 1,000%. And I think this next question, is really something that parents give a lot of thought to, but I don't think they really understand. So let's talk about, I know you have a son and a daughter, mm-hmm. and your husband's career as a baseball player would be, elite by mm-hmm. today's standards, because everybody is chasing that Division I, baseball. What about the term, the expectations we have for our children? And sometimes we don't verbally convey them, but through our habits or through our routines, we're creating these expectations, and our children can feel them. And can you talk to that as we're leaving that 11, 12, and we're getting into that age group that your children are, 13 through 14 or 15, the weight of expectations and the significance of trying to balance that and really talk about that amongst yourselves as a family?
Great question. So again, we will ask both of our kids throughout the season. I'm not talking every week, but a few times. Are you still having fun? Still Amen. Loving this? Such a basic question, right? But I ask it in that way, with that calm tone of voice, because I want them to know that it has to be their decision. So expectations, gosh, just by my husband having played baseball, he unknowingly places an expectation on my son, who's also a pitcher. Man, that's tough.
Big. That's big.
And because he's aware of it, though, he doesn't tell people that he played. He doesn't try to push too hard. So I feel very grateful. I don't think that's the norm. I think just, again, letting them lead the way while also communicating that, hey, Billy, by you playing this sport, it is a family commitment. So that's why I keep asking you if you're having fun. I need to make sure that you love this, right? Because it's a lot of work for all of us. And we want to see you sort of, pursuing your goals and your passions. So let's just make sure we're in alignment. And we want you to be grateful for the sacrifices that we're making. And I think that needs to be said.
Well, I think it is really powerful because you're not only speaking on behalf of experience, both you and your husband, from being a teen athlete into a high school and then ultimately Division I college athletes. We as parents sometimes forget that our dreams, really are centered around our children having fun, being nurtured in a growth environment, but at the same time, it's easy for us to get carried away at a travel tournament or a high school event or a junior high or middle school event. And we don't recognize that, our children instinctively do not want to let us down as parents or grandparents or their siblings, etc. So I'd like to end on this topic because I really feel every time I read anything that you put out into social media, I always look at it as, okay, this is someone that really is living this experience. So now you are preparing for high school for both your son and your daughter. I mean, they're on the cusp. I know we're 13 and 15. So parents at these ages begin to think college and forget, what about high school? We got to live high school first. We got a lot of stuff going on in high school. And I always talk about this. The mentor dynamic at the high school level is significant. For me, it was 1978/1981. And a lot of stuff happened in that little hyphen, that little line, meaning first girlfriend, learning how to drive. I had a death of a parent. You're really growing into a person, into an adult. So can you just talk about that mindset, that development process that you're on the cusp of, and you really want to make sure they're prepared for all, the peer pressure, the expectation of being a college athlete, trying to get good grades. I mean, there's a lot going on at 13 to 15 that we don't think about away from youth sports.
Yes, I will try to keep it simple. So my daughter is a sophomore, and we are right now at the entry point of the recruiting process. So your point of, hey, let's not forget about where our feet are.
Right.
Let's make sure, like I have to be very mindful because my chest gets tight and I feel stressed and I feel behind. And what if I make the wrong decision? These are things that every parent feels. So I know that I'm not alone, but it's real. And so I try to write down and be mindful every day that, hey, I've got 2.5 years left with my girl before she flies the nest.
Amen.
Wow. I want to savor, I want to, like, we're baking Christmas cookies and we're doing all the things and trying to take trips to see family and creating memories. And when I start to feel that angst, I have to tell myself as a mental performance coach, hey, you need to listen to your own advice. You need to breathe and you need to think about, what is your long-term goal for your child? I need her to be happy and healthy and hopefully pursuing one of her passions. Whether that includes college softball, we'll see.
Right.
It's a great story. It sounds good. It looks good on social media, but if it's not for her, then it doesn't matter what I want. So expectations are happiness for your child, meeting them where they are. I have an 8th grader and a 10th grader, so their needs and their next steps are very different, right? And ultimately making commitments that our family can handle, that makes sense for our family, that still enable us to be happy and healthy and thrive.
Well, I think for parents, Tamara is someone that you can trust, not only because she's living it, but she has a lifetime of experience and is able to relate to today's parents of all student athletes, not just baseball or softball, all student athletes. And so, Tamara, how are people going to find you? I know I'm going to list it down below in the video, but from social media to emails, what's the best way to introduce a family to you with regard to your service?
Sure. So my website is elitemindsetdevelopment.com. It's very user-friendly. So as soon as you log on, it'll ask you, you can fire a question my way. I'm also on Twitter/X under my name. I still can't call it X, sorry.
Right,
and Instagram, Facebook, my company's name, Elite Mindset Development. So reach out to me through social or through my website, and I will be thrilled to speak with you and see if and how I can help.
Well, we have been efforting to make a part of our podcast going forward, particularly into 2024, both my son and I, Tyler, we would love to be able to once a month have a segment with you specifically to talk about questions that we get from parents as well as student athletes that are kind of current and relevant in today's world. And I can think of no one better than you, as you are about to live this for the next 4 or 5 years over the path of, the middle school into the high school and beyond. So I want to say thank you for taking the time. I know it's a busy time of year, but as always, you're the best at what you do. I feel that way, and I hope others do as well. And I want to say thank you for your time today, as well as in the future.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate you. Happy holidays, and I'm glad that you are over the hump with your health. So we appreciate what you do and what you offer to everyone.
I still think I have a little bit of a droopy eye, but it's beginning to go away. So I'm starting to feel,
You're
from a
faking it
vanity
well.
standpoint, I think I'm trying to feel better. But Tamara, thank you so much. I want to let everyone know every time that I have Tamara on, I do get a couple of questions that I do forward to Tamara directly. And I want to make sure that you reach out, feel comfortable, send her an email, send her a text message via the social media. I'll have everything down below. I also encourage you to subscribe not only to our YouTube channel, but follow Tamara on social media, because she's always going to be posting information, something that you can take away as a parent and apply to your current situation with your young children and student athletes. Tamara, thank you so much. Happy holidays, and look forward to talking with you again in the future.
Thanks, Walt. You too. Bye-bye.
All right, bud. Thank you.
Yep.